Okay, so let's talk about designing your level. So to create your map for your game, you're going to be using a program called Tiled, and I've linked to that from your Canvas page. It is a free download. It's free and open source, easy to use, exports what we need. So I'll have you download and install that. It comes for Windows, Linux, and Mac. And then I also found a tile set. So a tile set is like a set of, you can almost think of them as stamps, like a set of tiles that you can use to build up your scene. So this one's got some water and some other stuff, and these are all in separate PNGs. The ones I'm going to use for my map are probably this one with the grass and this one with the trees and rocks and stuff. So what I think I'm going to do is I'll have some grass, and then I'm going to have some walls and stuff that they collide with, and then also some trees and stuff that they collide with. Just like stop them, because we're making this maze game. We want to make it like fairly difficult for them to navigate around to pick up the collectibles. So that's going to be the hard part, is like finding your way through. So so I've got those two things. Then I'm going to open up Tiled. Now, Tiled, the setup of Tiled of your map is super important for, it's really important that you do it correctly, or it's not going to work with Phaser. So this like beginning bit is super important. So I've made a new file. I've just gone new map, not new tile set, but new map. And then in my properties here, it's important that I have these things set. So I'm going to do an orthogonal, so kind of like a top down looking at the game. The tire layer format needs to be CSV, so not any of these base 64 things. So that's really important. Tile render order right down, that's fine. Some other important things. My tile size is 16 pixels by 16 pixels. So if I look back at one of these files here, each one of these little squares that build up these things are 16 by 16. Usually that's stated on the page in the page where you've downloaded it. If not, you may have to go into Illustrator or something to figure that out, figure out how big those tiles are. And then for the map size, you can pick kind of whatever makes sense there for you. So for this example one, I think what I'll do is I'm going to do a fairly small map. So I'm just going to go 30 by 30. For the assignment, you're going to want to do something much larger, but not infinite. Infinite is too big to deal with. You'll never be able to make a map that's infinitely big. So, and we're not going to get into how to do that right now. So let's do a fixed size one. And for the example, again, I'm going to do this size, but you certainly for your actual game should do a larger one. The next thing it's going to make you do is name it and save it. So I'm going to call mine Maze 20, and I'm going to save it into my assets folder. So a TMX is a tiled authoring file, so I'm going to save that into my assets folder and hit save. Then it's going to create this map. So here are all of those 16 by 16 little tiles, and then I just need to populate that with stuff that I want that my scene to be made of. Okay, so next up what I need to do is bring in my tile sets. So in the interface here, there's new tile set, so I can just click that button. Again, really important that you embed your tile set in the map, that you have that checked off. Otherwise, this won't work either. So make sure that that's checked off, and then browse for the tile set you're going to use. So I'm going to use 7 here. So this one I'm going to name here. I'm going to name it grass. This has to be a web-friendly name, so no spaces or special characters, just letters, uppercase and lowercase. Okay, and then you can just hit OK. So once I've done that, I now have my tile set loaded in here. So I can use these as kind of like a stamp. So the tool I'm going to use is the stamp tool up here. And I can either just stamp one frame. So there I can click it multiple times and do that. If I want to erase anything, there's an eraser tool there that I can erase with. Or I can do a bunch of frames at once. So if in my tile set area here, I highlight over a bunch of the frames, then when I come out here and click, it's going to click that whole thing out there. Okay, so there's a couple ways of doing that. I'll undo that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a few of the grassy squares here, but not any that have like kind of the edging on it. So I think just these ones I'm going to do. So I'm going to select those. And if I want to fill a whole layer, I can use the paint bucket here and just click out there. And now it's filled that whole layer with that repeating pattern. Okay, so I'm going to start with that and then I'm going to add my walls in. You could, like I said, just stamp it out, but because I wanted just this kind of ongoing pattern, I've done it that way. The layers should also have web-friendly names. So I'm going to rename tile layer here to grass. Now, of course, you'd name that something that makes sense for your particular file. Actually, no, I'm going to rename this background because maybe you put like water and different things in there. This is going to be the layer that my player does not collide with stuff on. So this is just kind of scenery things. For the stuff my player collides with, I'm going to come down to the bottom of that layers panel and click this new layer button and choose tile layer. So all the layers you're going to use are tile layers. And then I'm going to rename this walls. Okay, so that's going to have my walls on it. Then I'm going to use my stamp to start building out the walls. So you can do different combinations. So for example, maybe I have something like this, and then maybe it, like you could put a couple of those together so it kind of curves away. Maybe I also want to do one where it's kind of curving back, so you can think about how those, maybe I need to get rid of that particular frame there so that it makes more sense. Maybe something like that or something. And you're just going to build those things up. Maybe I put like a soft edge. Oh, that's already got that. You know, so maybe I put a couple of these things out there. I put one here and there to kind of, actually, I could make kind of a, let's see, like that, and then maybe, right? So you're just kind of using them as stamps to build up what you want that to look like. And then maybe something like this. So they're like forced to go in a small area like that, and so on. And now I'm putting those all on the walls layer. So if I hide the background layer like this, I can see that this is the stuff that the player is going to collide with. Now, if I had it like this, although it looks like I would only be colliding with maybe that graphic, I have to think about where those tiles are. So right now in this bottom part, my character would be colliding all the way out here, right? And you don't want it to be stopping your player that far away from the map. So you're going to go in with your eraser and just kind of erase any parts of this that aren't necessary. Because that's just going to be providing collisions where it doesn't matter. Sometimes if there's just like a little bit, like here, let me just come back. See how there's a little bit of the color on that one? I don't really care if that's part of the scene, and I don't think if I just kind of erase this stuff in and we check it out by turning on that background layer again, you can't really notice that that's missing, so I wouldn't really be worried about that. So I'm trying to make it as tight to the thing as possible so that those collisions are better. Now that's probably not wide enough for my character to move in between. So, maybe what I do is I'm just going to have to rebuild that bit and just make a little bit extra space there for my character to move through, my player to move through. Otherwise, like, I mean, I could, that's a bit too much, right? Like it's starting to eat away at part of my scene. Let's see what it looks like with the background. If I get rid of that, yeah, it looks kind of obvious. So that one maybe I would leave. So you got to think about those sorts of things too. What does it look like with the background? What doesn't it? Now, so far I've only used one tile set. If I want to bring another tile set in, because I wanted to bring some of those trees and stuff in, I go down to the bottom of the tile set window and click on that new tile set button. And I go through the same thing again. Make sure embed in map is clicked. I browse for my other tile set. Give it a name that's web friendly, so trees or something like that. Embed in map is checked, and okay. Now I've got a second tile set over here, trees and grass. So if I go to trees and say, okay, I want to put this tree out there, grab my stamps, and I can start plopping trees out. However I want to set this up, maybe I've got some of these. I don't know, maybe it's like that. Maybe I've got like the wishing well somewhere. I don't know. There. Oh. Maybe there. And you could have it, it's easiest if you have all your collidable stuff on one layer. So I'm going through and maybe they can't walk through these rocks. Now, if there's items here that I want to add to the scene, but I don't want my character to hit. So say these flowers, for example, I would put those on the background layer. So I can, I would have to make these invisible tiles. So I didn't do that. Oh, I guess what I could do is have another layer of, so like background 2 or something of other things that I just want to be part of the scene, but aren't going to cause a collision with my character. So I'm going to build that up. Okay, so say this is my finished scene. I'm not going to worry about putting any of the things that I'm picking up in here. This is just the level design. So I've got my background, which in this case is just grass, and I've got my walls. Again, I've gone through and cleaned that up as much as I could to get rid of all of those little bits and bobs that I could get rid of. Then what I'm going to do is save it, and I'm going to come up to File and say Export As. It should default to a JSON file, and I'm going to save this into my folder. So .json, and I'm just going to hit save. When I come and open that in Dreamweaver, it's going to look something like this, a mass of code. So what's happening here is it's those JSON objects that we've seen before. So you'll notice like some of the syntax, curly brackets with things separated by commas. You don't need to understand this whole file. If your JSON file looks completely different than this, it probably means you didn't set up the file correctly to begin with. So in tiled, just go back to map properties and make sure that you've set those properties in the way that is outlined on the canvas page. I've put just a screenshot there of what the file should be. But if it does look like this, yay, and we can move on to the next step.